everyone, I'm Monique Griffith, and today I'm going to show you a couple of design tips on how to make your project stand out a little more and go to the next level. So I'm going to show you how to take an ordinary card and make it look a little more fabulous. So let's get started. Okay, I have a comparison to show you of kind of a normal card that a lot of us would probably make, and then what it would look like if you add some of the normal details that I always add to my projects. So I'm going to walk you through those and we'll see how it turns out. So first of all, one thing I use all the time is chalk ink, and this is my favorite color. It's by Versamagic. It's Jumbo Java. So I'm actually going to go ahead and ink the sewing machine cabinet, and I'm also going to ink the red and the patterned mat under that. And normally I would have also inked the little drawers, but those are already glued on, but you can see what a difference that makes. So I'll just kind of, and it's not too late, I can kind of touch them up a little bit. You can kind of go as crazy as you want with the ink, or you can keep it kind of toned down. It's all personal choice. I tend to go a little bit crazy with it. But what the ink does is it gives it definition, helps add contrast, and it also kind of gives it a nice weathered sort of a look. So there's my sewing machine, and I'm also going to ink this mat. And you just kind of feather it around the edge. Again, you can do as much or as little as you want. I tend to do a lot. And I chose this pattern because doing this theme of a card with the sewing machine, I kind of thought this pattern looked like fabric. So I thought it would go nicely with the theme. Okay, and I'm also going to just barely ink my word. Not a lot, just kind of the bottom edge. This would be pretty tricky to ink very much of it. So just a tiny little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue this mat to the black mat. And that black mat really adds a lot of contrast and strength to the card. It kind of frames it and anchors it. And the sizes and all the information for this card are on Everyday Cricut, so you can see exactly how to make this. Okay, next step is, instead of just a plain ribbon, I'm actually going to go ahead and put a few brads. So I've got some kind of antique copper brads. And I'm going to put 3 of them all the way through the ribbon. And I'm going to use a paper piercer. Looks like I'm ready for a dental exam. And I'll be careful that I don't check my blood type while I'm at it. You can also use just a hole punch, a little tiny hole punch, but that will only reach in so far. With a paper piercer you can reach in a lot further. And sometimes it's a little tricky to put brads through ribbon because it can kind of catch on the fibers. So we'll see if I have any luck with this today. Maybe not. Make sure you get the hole large enough. There's one. And I tend to do groups of 3, especially when you're putting brads in kind of random places. There's something called the rule of 3s. And I don't know all the rules, but I think it works. I hope you have good dexterity. I wish I did. Okay, those are all through. And then you can open up the backs of them. And I'm also going to use brads on another area of this card, which will help tie in the look of these brads. Okay, once the brads are through, then I'm ready to go ahead and glue on this black mat. And if you don't have an ATG gun, you are seriously missing out. Every crafter should have an ATG gun, but only if you like to save tons of money, which I do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and center that on my card. Okay. Now, the next thing that I really like to do is to add shadows. You can see these look okay here, but they don't really pop. There's not a ton of contrast going on, and especially with the words on the pattern paper, there's not a lot to separate them, so your eye doesn't read it as easily. So what I have done is I've cut out some shadows, and I'm going to go ahead and attach these to the shadows. And you can use a glue pen or any kind of adhesive that works for fine cuts. You can even put a little bit of ATG on it if it's big enough here and there. ATG tape is really nice and sticky. And then go in with a glue pen and add a little bit more. Especially on these little tiny legs. Yes, I'm being brave by putting this right on my card and hope I don't miss. I just messed that up. I did. I actually put my pop dots on the wrong side. Let's see if this will cover it. That's what I get for trying to plan ahead. We'll see if this will work or not. Still worked. Phew! Lucky save. Okay. Okay, luckily I didn't do it to that. Okay, and then I'm going to use my glue pen on here, also to add this to a shadow. A glue pen is really nice for fine cuts. I also use something called Dry Bond, which is like a dry adhesive that comes in tablets. Either one works really well. Takes a little patience when you've got something with this many details, but it's worth it. Attach this to its shadow. And it's just a thin shadow, but it's also got solid in the middle, so that really does help. And I already put pop dots on the back of this, and pop dots are another thing that will help provide definition because, again, it's something that separates and helps give a shadow. I tend to overdo it with the pop dots, but you only really need a few. And then I'm just going to center that on the card. And we'll redo the pop dots on my sewing machine since I goofed them up earlier. These pop dots are from Stampin' Up! And I love them because they're not too thick, but they're thick enough to do the job. And they're pretty inexpensive as far as pop dots go. And it helps if you kind of use your thumbnail to make a crease that makes the back pop up a little bit. And then I did forget to do I'm actually really quick going to do some brads on the drawers. That was one other little detail that I wanted to show you. And I used the antique copper brads because they just kind of gave the project sort of a nice warm old-fashioned feel to it. And I was kind of going for that sort of rustic country look and feel. This card is going to be for my aunt, and she does a lot of sewing projects. And I think these brads, I believe that they came from Michael's, I'm pretty sure. Might have been Joann's. But any of the big box stores generally carry brads. It really helps if you have hands that work properly. Maybe a little bigger hole there. Okay. And really when I design, some of the main things I go for are just contrast, definition, separating patterns. I tend to use a lot of patterns, but the trick is to separate them so they're not just running right into each other. If they're running right into each other, your eye doesn't quite know what to do. But if you separate them, then they work nicely together. So center that on there. And then the last little tip that I do is I tend to use a white pen a lot. And it's a Signo Uniball gel pen. And I keep a scrap of paper handy to kind of get the ink flowing. And I just randomly will do dots in sets of 3 or 5. Just kind of here and there. And it does take a minute for the dots to dry, so try not to drag your hand through the dots that you just made. I've done that before and it's pretty hard to fix. And what this does is it just kind of adds a little bit of light and a little bit of life to your project. And I'm going to do faux stitching around the edge. Since I have wet ink up here, I think I'm going to start, I'll start at the bottom here. And the faux stitching does not have to be perfect. That's kind of part of the charm. So you can go pretty quickly and not worry too much about it being perfect. And again, be careful that you don't drag your hand through it. Looks like my daughter just got home from school. This also goes really nicely with the sewing machine theme. But I do faux stitching a lot on different photo mats, around the edge of a layout. You can do it on titles and words. And it tends to just add a lot of life and look really cute. And there it is. It's no longer drab. Those are a few design tips. There's no right or wrong way to do it. This is just what I do, and I think it adds a little bit of life to the project. So I hope you learned something, and thanks for joining me today.